Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us for our WOTS Weekly Features finale. Today's guest is Nathan Maharaj, Director of Content Marketing at Kobo. We'll be talking about e-reading, audiobooks, and the memoirs that Kobo readers are loving right now. I'm Yeli, and I'll be your host. WOTS Toronto operates on land that is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca and the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Confederacy of the Anishinaabe and Allied Nations to care for and share the resources around the Great Lakes in peace. We encourage you to educate yourself about the land that you live on wherever you're tuning in from. All right, and Nathan is a lifelong bookseller. He is presently the Director of Content Marketing for Kobo, where he oversees book blogging in multiple languages and produces the Kobo in Conversation podcast. He recently discovered he's been bearded for most of his life, and his chin could not be reached for comment. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nathan. It's such a blast to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Yeli.
Could we maybe dive in and talk a little bit about yourself and the journey that led you to Kobo?
Yeah, I've been with Kobo since it was founded.
Wow.
So back when it was a skunkworks project in the basement of Indigo, I was
Mhm.
technically an internal transfer because I was in the category management team at Indigo. And so I've been with Kobo since 2009. I hired the first book selling team, had to figure out how we could do that internationally. Before that, I was like I say, category manager at Indigo, and prior to that, I had come through sort of the retail operations channel because I had been working in a chapter store in Mississauga,
Mm.
which is closed now. We can't visit the site, unfortunately. It's an important part of my heritage, but the city of Mississauga could not be persuaded to preserve it.
Yes, totally. That's so interesting that you've been with Kobo for so long. I wasn't aware of that. How it must be nice to kind of see all of the big changes as Kobo grows and becomes bigger.
Yeah, and sort of keeps a bit of the startup hustle, even though we're bought by Rakuten, this
Mm.
Japanese e-commerce company, quite some time ago now, and we're now like a member of the Rakuten family and still hustling like a little startup that that's got to keep moving.
Very cool. For any viewers who don't know necessarily what Kobo is yet, could you give us a little rundown of what
Yeah,
you offer?
Yeah. So Kobo offers ebooks and audiobooks. You can get them on any app. But we also make e-readers. We make some really good e-readers. I think we make some fantastic devices. And that's the whole thing. We just serve readers every which way that we can. Um, through, like I said, we've got audiobooks, we've got an audiobook subscription. With
Mm.
ebooks, we've also got an ebook subscription. So a portion of the ebook catalog is available, for one price every month, and you just read all you want as if it's your own your own bookshelf, but it's got like over 500,000 books on it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What are some of the most popular Kobo products out there right now?
Yeah, when it's tempting to say to when asked a question like that, it's tempting to want to answer with an e-reader because that's like a
Mm.
product. But really, the thing that keeps us moving, it's ebooks and audiobooks. It's the reading experiences. The devices are super important. The devices are always our best customers are the ones that have Kobo e-readers. Whether they migrated from an app to an e-reader or whether that's how they started reading digitally to start with. But the when you ask what's our most popular products, it's reading experiences. It's ebooks
Mm.
and audiobooks all day long.
Love it. I feel like there's been this big debate for such a long time about e-readers and digital books versus print books, and they're often kind of pitted against each other. But I guess what does e-reading and e-readers provide that print books might not necessarily provide, in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't need to be a battle.
Totally, I agree.
But I mean, one of so when I was a category manager at Indigo, one of the categories I managed was large print. And that's a category that's more or less, kind of replaced by digital reading. Because rather than spending $50 on the large print version of whatever book there is, and there's only a few large print versions because something has to be an absolute number one bestseller to even go into large print. You can buy it for the same price everybody else is buying it for your e-reader, or borrow it from the library, and then adjust the font, adjust the margin, adjust the screen lighting to what actually is comfortable for you, so you can actually read and do the thing that you want to do when you're reading, which is just get lost in the story, or fully embrace the ideas and not worry about like the physical part of engaging with the text. So that's one big part. And the other part is readers, especially readers, joining this broadcast, we're pretty rapacious. We consume a lot, and it's nice to digital. There's no additional weight for however big your appetite is for books, if they're all on your e-reader. So if you don't know what you're going to want to read when you finally get to the beach or get to the cottage or get to wherever you want to get away to, it's okay. It's all on your e-reader, and you can choose in the moment, and you can drop it and then try something else too, and no bookstore required.
Yes, I love that, especially if you're somebody like me who previously had to bring 5 different books on vacation because you just don't know what you're going to read in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Do you have any favorite memories from working with Kobo?
Oh yeah, I mean, it comprises a sizable chunk of my adult life, but a few years back, I got to interview one of my favorite authors on stage, Rainbow Rowell, and we talked
Mhm.
about her book Fangirl and Eleanor and Park, a really beautiful novel she wrote really early on. I met Colson Whitehead the day before the 2016 election. He came by the
Wow,
office and we did an interview as well. And just a couple months ago, we did an episode of the Kobo and Conversation podcast with Malcolm Gladwell. That was a lot of fun, from his home studio.
very cool. Sounds like you get to work with lots of very fun, interesting people.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
For
Yeah,
sure. Let's see. I would love to talk audiobooks because I personally love audiobooks.
yeah.
How would you say, as somebody who kind of sees it from a different angle,
Mhm.
how are audiobooks changing the landscape of reading and of writing?
I think I'm not sure they change the landscape of writing too much. A little bit, certainly a little bit. I mean, I just mentioned Malcolm Gladwell, whose latest book originated as an audiobook. The audiobook is the primary format, and the book is a secondary. But in terms of reading, the thing about audiobooks is how they open up all that time in the day when you couldn't really read, like washing the dishes,
Mhm.
or folding laundry, walking the dog, shopping at the grocery store, whatever. All these times when your eyes and your hands are occupied, but your brain is open to stories and ideas. Like you've got the attention to spare. If only someone could read a book to you. And so that's for me, that's the killer thing about audiobooks. And what really opened it up for me personally was figuring out that I could split up kind of my reading life, and there's a certain kind of book that I'm interested in. I want to know more about a topic. I want to, maybe it's a parenting book where I want to get some advice, some self-helpy type stuff, or a business
Mm.
book that's got some ideas that I'm interested in. But I'm not so interested that I'm ever going to make this a priority in those precious moments where I can actually sit down and like devote my whole body to reading. Like I am sitting, my eyes are occupied, I am trying to listen to nothing else. And like that's really precious. And that always tends to go to other kinds of books. But for the books where, I just kind of want to get a sense of what's going on, and I want to, almost like a podcast, just like tell me some cool stuff for a while. That's kind of where audiobooks have snuck in for me, and then I get to open up whole other streams of reading that I do just through audio.
Yes, definitely. I feel like we must be reading twins because all of the activities you listed are where when I read my audiobooks, washing the dishes and all that.
Yeah, it's perfect. Exactly. Can you imagine washing the dishes without audiobooks? It was the worst.
It would be awful.
Yeah, like forget it. The dishes can sit.
Yes, for
I
sure.
refuse until I have an audiobook.
Same, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, what so it's memoir week here at WOTS
Yeah,
Weekly Features. What do you think is special about audiobooks and memoir? I think that there's something so special about people reading their own
totally.
stories.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like the not every author should read their book. That's I think that's well understood, especially those of
Mhm.
us who've listened to lots of audiobooks. But there's a lot to be said for someone writing a book who from some other medium.
Mhm.
You've heard, maybe they're an actor, maybe they're a comedian or something, audiobooks kind of make you question, why did we give these people, like, why did we make them just write books, like write things on the page before? Why didn't we always just capture an oral performance? And it's amazing that we can do that now. So things like memoirs, like Barack Obama's Promised Land memoir. It's really long, but he's
Yes.
very good at talking, and he's very good at writing words to be spoken. I've actually never read him on the page. He for me, he's 100% an audiobook author for me. Um, and then we've seen really great success with Jan Arden's new memoir, If I Knew Then. She narrates that herself. She's another person that people love her voice. They love her. They want the presence of her, not just the words on the page. And so that's done really well. But we've even seen like surprise hits, like the New York Times columnist Suleika Jawad. She wrote a book. She fell ill with cancer in her 20s, and spent like just like this early adulthood. She just spent it all in hospitals, in and out of cancer wards. And so in her 30s, as she sort of like decided how she was going to figure out who she is and what she's going to do with her life, she went on this road trip, and she's talking to all these people, and about death has kind of come into their lives or brushed past them. And it's a lovely memoir that she narrates herself, and it's great, this travel journal that comes from in her own voice.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I feel like for myself as well, there's a you already mentioned this, but there's something that gets me so excited about a good oral performance as well as
Yeah.
good words on the page. It's like a completely different facet of reading.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you mentioned in your bio and a little bit previously that
Yep.
you also work on the Kobo in Conversation podcast.
I sure
Could
do.
you tell us a little bit about that as well?
Yeah. So I've been producing the Kobo and Conversation podcast now for a little while. I just started that at the beginning of last year, which was a lot of fun to figure out, because the beginning of last year was pretty turbulent.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
it's a great show. I love it because it's a medium length podcast, so it's always under an hour, and it's interviews with authors, one on one, with Kobo CEO Michael Tamblyn, who he's the type of guy. He's also a lifelong bookseller. He's always been like at the technological periphery of bookselling, but he's been basically doing that his whole life. So he's just interested in everything. He'll go anywhere. If books are at the center of the discussion, he'll follow it. So he interviews authors about how they came to write, what kind of a reader were they as a child, how have books, what are their favorite books, what do they love to read, what do they not like to read, what do they like to read that's completely surprising and unlike what they write.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talk a little bit about their current books. So we've had Marion Keyes, Eden Robinson, Helen Oyeyemi was fascinating. We had her earlier this year, but we also have like nonfiction things, scientists. Paleontologist Steve Versati was on talking about dinosaurs. Katie Mack, the cosmologist, who's also fantastic on Twitter. Michael wrote 5 different haikus on how she describes the universe ending in her book, and then we had her grade them. So the show
Wow.
can kind of go anywhere, but it really always comes down to a conversation between 2 people, one of whom is a writer and a reader, and we're just talking about books. Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. It's a great show. I'm very proud of it. And you can find everything if you go to kobo.com/conversation. That's where it all lives.
Awesome. It sounds perfect, like for nosy readers like myself who love
Yeah, for
knowing all
sure.
the ins and outs of books and writers.
Yeah.
So back to memoir for a little bit.
Yeah.
You mentioned a few memoirs previously. Are there any other memoirs that you're finding Kobo readers are particularly enjoying right now that are doing really well in your Kobo database?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. Certainly, I mean, the Obamas rule the day. Michelle had her run and then handed off to her also talented husband. So they release a memoir. It's instant gold. Um, the memoir Educated by Tara Westover is also doing extremely well, continuing to do extremely well. We're seeing, it's pre-order time because the fall season's coming. So there's David Sedaris, also great on audio, is putting out a lot of his early diaries. So that's going to be fun to get sort of the back catalog of like one of the funniest literary guys around. And he's another all audio guy. I mean, he it's fine. He writes well to the page, but I love the performance.
He's such a performer for sure.
Yeah.
It's funny that we're mentioning your podcast because I kind of stole this question for our interview from your Kobo Writing Life podcast.
Nice.
But what was the last amazing book that you read?
Oh, it would be P. Jelly Clark. He's a speculative fiction writer. And he wrote a book that came out last year called Ring Shout. And it's you can find it on the staff picks page of the Kobo blog. If you search Nathan Kobo, what's Nathan Kobo reading? That's the Google search that'll get you there. So Ring Shout is this kind of horror action story about Georgia in the early part of the 20th century, and D.W. Griffith's movie The Birth of a Nation is being toured, but it turns out D.W. Griffith is a wizard, and the movie is casting a spell, and at the same time it's sort of like recruiting people into the Ku Klux Klan, and the Klan, this spell has opened up a portal to hell, and actual demons are coming out, and they are working in support of the KKK.
Oh my gosh.
Plenty of humans still are buying into the horrible agenda of violence that the KKK is promulgating. But anyway, so you got actual demons, so you have to have demon hunters. So you have this band of magically informed seers who can see the demons, and then they fight them, and it's amazing. And at the level, it works at the level of like, oh my God, amazing action. But it's also this wonderful metaphor for racism, for violence, and how these things interact and the choices we make and how we feel about them. It's just fantastic book, shockingly brief that it's like actually almost just novella length. But yeah, P. Jelly Clark, Ring Shout, he is an amazing writer.
Sounds like such a fantastical world and story.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Very cool. As somebody who works with the marketing side of things and who's been working in this field for a long time, do you have any pieces of advice for authors who want to get their work published and maybe on the Kobo database?
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, I mean, God, there's so many ways in. If it's a question of, the question is always where's your audience? Who are you trying to get to? And I would say for a genre fiction writer, publishing through a self-published platform like Kobo Writing Life, that gets you straight into our store. Then it's and you've got control of everything, your pricing, your geo rights, and you can opt into things like, I mean, the Kobo Plus catalog. That's our ebook subscription service. The thing about genre readers is they love to read one thing after another, and they're easy to serve through automated recommendations. So I would say if you're a genre fiction writer, making your stuff available in subscription services like Kobo Plus, it's a really good idea for finding the right kinds of readers, because we want to find them too. We will work really hard to put the right books in front of people so that they stay engaged.
Awesome. Amazing. And then my final question
Yeah.
is, do you have any hopes and dreams for the future of Kobo and our reading world?
God, I'm just glad people are still reading. I'm glad
Yeah.
that people rediscovered how much they love reading. Even when we went
Mm,
through the hard times of the early part of the pandemic, where the bookstores were all closed and we didn't know how we'd ever browse in a bookstore again. It was a strange feeling to know that we that I that you know to for me to realize I'm in this business that's doing this essential function because we can't get at books any other way. And so I was just glad to see that. I was glad to see that even under the duress of this pandemic, people still turned to books. Books were what they
mm,
wanted to indulge in. Those are places they wanted to go and a thing they wanted to spend their attention on. So, my hope is that for all of the new technological ways we find to distract ourselves, I hope we just keep reading.
absolutely. That's so well said. Such a good place to end off. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on or cover that we haven't chatted about already?
It would just delight me so much for folks to check out the Kobo and Conversation podcast. Really, that's it's the nearest and dearest thing to my heart that I work on. So, kobo.com/conversation, or find it on YouTube, or find it anywhere, because it's everywhere. And if you want us to interview, hit us up on Twitter at Kobo. That's us. So, uh, let us know. We're always figuring this out because there's so many authors to talk to and so many conversations to have about books.
Awesome. Excellent. And then it looks like we actually have a question in the
Oh,
comments
all
from
right.
viewers. Um, we have, how have you managed the challenges of recording audio, so that's books or podcasts, with
Yeah.
different authors in the last 18 months with all the restrictions everywhere?
Well, so when I this is so when I took on the podcast, one of the things that stressed me out the most was I had to inherit some legacy processes, because the first season had been produced and the second season
Mm,
was actually to be edited. So I had to figure out, how are we going to produce the third season, or actually we had to finish the second. And it was a question of, like, how are we going to record people? Like, how's this going to work?
mm,
And so there was sort of a couple things going on. One was the logistics and I remember actually I had all but hired a freelancer to go to Timothy Caulfield's office at the University of Alberta to record him. Timothy Caulfield being the public health and law expert who was exactly the right author to interview at the end of March. But that quickly fell apart. We realized that was not sound at all. We were not going to send a freelancer into somebody's workspace.
mm.
What we realized was, and listening to other podcasts, was not everyone needs to be in a studio. Even I am not in a studio, and you may have heard my children arrive home just moments ago. I don't know if that made it into my mic. I've done my best to damp down here,
I don't
but
think it did.
oh, thank goodness.
You're
Okay,
good.
they gave it a shot. So the what I found was, I've been listening, NPR, CBC, and what became clear to me was the host has to have high quality audio. And so I sent Michael Tamblyn, you're going to buy this microphone, the Blue Yeti X. This is the one you're going to buy. I'm going to ship you a mount in several pieces, and you're going to set this up on your desk, and this is how we're going to do it.
Mm,
And so we've done that. And just to get the host up to high quality audio, we found the conversations work okay if we can just get the guest to be good enough. Because what my own feeling is, we're so inclined to hearing voices that quality issues, as long as you can hear all of the words, the fidelity, I think, can vary. Nobody wants to like listen into like what sounds like a CB radio conversation, but as long as you've got that host who's the listener's proxy. My philosophy of audio production is the host in high fidelity is enough, and then you'll just listen to the guest from wherever they are. And it's almost scene setting to have the
mhm,
host, to have the guest joining by some technology that maybe shows itself a little bit. Maybe there's a couple digital artifacts that tell you that they're on Zoom. Maybe there's a little bit of echo that tells you maybe they're not using headphones, but they're not. It's like room echo. It's not like annoying repeating echo, but just a little bit of room tone. So yeah, I mean, if it's a question of how to record podcasts during this, it's sterilize the host, and guests can do whatever they like.
For sure. I imagine there's something almost charmingly authentic about all of those little bits of feedback sometimes.
Totally. And then they get to actually join us from their office, right? They're comfortable, they're in their workspace. And I just really enjoyed that.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nathan, for our finale. It's been such a wonderful time. It's been a great
honor.
chat.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, everybody, to find out more about everything that Kobo has to offer, go to kobo.com. And if you want even more Kobo, we are thrilled to let you know that they are our official ebook and audiobook partner for the 2021 festival. Visit our website to find out how you can win your very own Kobo e-reader. This has been our WOTS Weekly Features finale, but don't worry because you can get even more WOTS content at our festival in September. Join us September 16th to 26th for 10 days of author panels, workshops, and special events. You can find the schedule for that and sign up for our festival newsletter at our website. To nab this week's discounts and deals, go to toronto.thewordonthestreet.ca/weekly-features. And before we head out today, I'll invite my wonderful tech person and a familiar face, Sienna, back onto our screen with us. Our previous host.
Hello. Thank you everyone so much for sticking out with us from April, I think is when we did the first weekly feature, all the way through to this first week of September. It's been so much fun. We have a whole archive in case you've missed anything along the way. Wonderful authors, arts organizers, editors, anything you can think of, all sorts from all parts of this wonderful organism that we're all part of, known as Canadian literature. So thank you for being on the ride with us. It has been a pleasure. And we can't wait to see you at this year's festival.
Yes, yay.
All right, we'll leave you here, but have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks so much. Enjoy your reading.
Happy reading.